One. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Transforming Trauma to Triumph. I'm your host, Diana Min, and our special guest today is Miss Shari Alyse. Hi.
Hey, Diana. Nice to be here with you and your audience.
So happy to have you here. Shari is an international motivational speaker, a self-love coach, a best-selling author, and a joy expert. Ooh, I love it. I love it. So for our audience that isn't familiar with you or your work, if you can just let us know who you are, what you do, and who you help in the world.
Sure. First, are they living under a rock? No, just kidding. I'm joking. As you said, yeah, I'm a self-love coach and a speaker and an author. The work that I do really is about reconnecting people back to themselves. We'll talk, I'm sure, a lot about trauma and things like that. And my passion has always been, I've always been somebody who, as soon as I learn something, I just want to share it. I want to make other people's journeys here easier. And I've been doing that in a way since I was a little girl. And so the work that I do is just really guiding people again back to themselves because we've disconnected. And in that way, that reconnects them back to their joy, back to the truth of who they are.
Oh, that's so beautiful. So beautiful. That's actually a prayer that I kind of like implement within my own life, like every morning, or it's just like having me to come back to myself to help show other people to come back to themselves. Like you said, like we do lose that connection with ourselves. And once we've lost connection with ourselves, we tend to look outside of ourselves for answers or ways to define ourselves, which will always kind of lead us astray, right? Because we have to go within to know our true inner compass.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that we've been pulled since we were little to disconnect from ourselves because usually at a young age, whatever time that is, whether it was from our parents or somebody else or something that made us feel like we weren't enough in our lives. And we're like these beautiful, open vessels of love, creativity, joy, all of this. And when we're that open and we get hurt, we learn that this safe, open place is no longer safe. And so we learn to close off. And when we close off from ourselves, I feel like we've left ourselves and we go in search of, like you said, looking on the outside, trying to find that which we only have within.
Yeah.
Doing that. And then wonder find why we can't find contentment, and it's because we're looking everywhere else except where we left it.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your journey, because I know that, you said every time you learn something, you want to go teach it. So you're teaching this. So walk me through the journey of when you learned how to find your way home to yourself.
It's interesting because there was always something guiding me, but I didn't understand what it was. So it wasn't probably, it's interesting. I've been on, as most of us, a spiritual quest in some way, like for 2 decades, over 20 years. But it really wasn't until about 5 years ago where I realized, or 7 years ago, where I realized that I needed to reconnect back to myself, that's what was the missing all along, towards something, towards light, towards myself, but I couldn't fully comprehend it until I was in the middle of Italy in this old church, and I had this divine experience that I write about in my book. But when I was seven, let me just backtrack a little bit so you understand. When I was 7 years old, I was sexually abused by a stranger. And at that time in my life, the people in my life believed me, which was amazing. So I went and told, I spoke up, I prosecuted the guy. So I went to court, I stood up on a stand at 7 years old. And that was the turning point for me, trying to find my voice, I knew that I had to help others. I didn't understand how, but at 7 years old, I knew that my voice in telling would help someone else. And I found out then that he had abused a lot of girls. And so I had stopped that cycle there. And I think subconsciously I understood, speaking up helps others. And at the same time, speaking up for me also felt dangerous because when I was in that courtroom, and they made me say my address out loud and point him out. In my mind, I thought that after he got out of jail, that he would come and track me down. So I had this whole, throughout my life, this whole internal battle of speaking up to help, but then speaking up, it could hurt
Mm-hmm.
others. And so I spent a lot of my life running from that truth and trying to be accepted and loved and feel valued and feel worthiness from everybody else, through my achievements, through men, even trying to, you know, numb my feelings as so many of us do. And, you know, I battled with weight. I was once 270 pounds because I just couldn't sit with myself and those feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a moment in Sedona, Arizona. I don't know if you've ever been to Sedona before. Yeah. Where I had this experience where I ran into my 7-year-old self on one of the vortexes. Yeah. And we had this, and people think like that I'm crazy. And I'm like, as real as I'm sitting here with you right now, she was there.
I
And
just got chills all over my arm when you
yeah,
said that. Wow.
it, and in it we spoke, and you know, I told her that I could no longer go on protecting her any longer, and because I felt like I was hiding myself, you know, trying to keep a barrier around myself to keep her safe. And so I said, I have to let you go. And so it was this whole experience. And then something didn't feel right when I left Sedona. I didn't feel lighter. I felt like there was something that was unsaid. And about 3 years later, I was in Italy. I went off on the solo trip. I was doing the whole eat, pray, love thing.
Yeah,
And it was the end of my 3-month journey. And I was in this beautiful church and looking through the stained glass window, watching the sunrise and all the rays through there. And I heard what I believe was God's voice that said, you weren't supposed to leave her. You were supposed to love her. And in that moment, I knew that's where everything turned. I was like, oh no, I was supposed to sit with her. I was supposed to be with her. I was supposed to stop running from her. I was supposed to reconnect back to her. And so that's the work that I consistently do every single day, is to sit with myself, is to feel what I'm feeling, is to talk to her, is to give her what she needs, is to ask her what she needs. What is she feeling? And that's the work that I help others do.
oh, I have like chills all over my body right now.
That was a long-winded story, but
No, it was beautiful. It's so powerful. And, you know, God, I think really when we think about the way society is set up, like you said, like in our childhood, right? Like we're kind of taught that like uncomfortable feelings are, you know, are bad, right? So let's run away from them. Let's avoid them. Let's numb them. Like you said, let's distract ourselves. And it's really the healing is when we just sit with it and we allow ourselves to feel it like in its totality, the full spectrums of emotions, right? The sadness, the darkness, the happiness, the joy, all of it is when we really heal it and we allow it to be processed. And I say this about emotions all the time, just like, you know, it's like our body is naturally trying to process something. And, you know, when we have to go to the bathroom, we're processing food, whatever it is, like
right.
we allow it. But when it comes to our emotions, we somehow feel it's so uncomfortable that we run away from it. And you can, and people can be running away from it forever.
Yes.
And that is where, you know, where I love that you're a joy expert, really understanding that is how you like create joy in your life.
Yes.
Is when you go into the darkness and feel the sadness,
Yes.
that you can heal that and then actually experience real joy.
For me, joy, it feels like my soul celebrating life, celebrating, as you said, the totality of it, being able to feel the full spectrum of emotions. Our souls wanted to be in physical form here. And so the opportunity to be able to feel it all is where I believe joy comes from. They're literally like, yes, you know, like sadness is okay, anger is okay, frustration is okay. It all is. It all leads us back and closer to ourselves, to evolve, to grow, to expand. You know, and when we cut that off, we're not living again in our truth. We're not being the fullness and wholeness of who we are. And so this idea, and we are given it to by society, you know, don't worry, be happy. Like everything is about, you know, this and, you know, 30 days to happy, you know, never have a problem again. And then when you don't live up to that, then we feel badly about ourselves and we feel like we're not measuring up. And I mean, truth be told, like there are even good habits that can become unhealthy, you know, like people who, because you want to distract so badly. So people who are like, you know, workout experts and they're at the gym like 5 times a day. And even though it's healthy, a
Right.
lot of people are using these activities or these, you know, modalities, you know, yoga, meditation, all of this to really disconnect in a way
Mhm.
because not wanting to feel.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this. I call it toxic positivity. Yeah.
Yes. And I was part of that in the past.
Yeah, yeah, or like spirit, we call it spiritual bypassing too sometimes, when it's just like,
Yeah.
it's like, no, it's all love and light, and
Right.
like, I'm happy, I'm not gonna focus on the bad stuff, everything is good, you know what I mean? But like, is it really though? Like,
Right.
why don't we dive deeper into it, and obviously taking some work, having people like you or myself, or having people that are able to hold that space for you to kind of guide you within, because it's uncomfortable to try and do it by yourself. And I think when we really think about why people are doing it, why I've done it,
Mhm.
we have judgments, right? We judge our emotions. We're like, this is bad, this is good. And we have these expectations where it's like, no, I'm supposed to be happy all the time. Everything's supposed to be good. Like, and when we can just release all of that stuff and just accept ourselves as we are, right? Maybe I want to cry for 3 hours, and that's okay.
Yes.
Being forgiving with yourself.
Absolutely. And I don't know about you, but I grew up in a house, like I had a very supportive family, but so much so that when I would have an emotion that was uncomfortable or, you know, deemed as not good, it was like, come on, you're stronger than that. And that whole like, you're braver, you're more courageous, push through, you know, they don't matter. They're just jealous of you or whatever that was. There was never the hold space and sit with. And that's what I feel so many of us haven't been given. And so it's hard to be able to learn how to do that without just trying to power through.
Yeah.
After my experience, you know, in the courtroom and everything, I got told throughout my childhood about how courageous and brave I was and how I saved all these girls. And nobody sat to ask me, do I feel that way? How do you feel? So I was always told how to feel. And so throughout my life, I spent so many years when those uncomfortable feelings would come to not sit with them, but to push through them and say, you're braver than that. You're more courageous. You're stronger. You can do this, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what I feel so many of us do with the happiness and the joy and the light and the love and the spiritual bypassing is, and the truth is that if we were meant, I feel, to live in this space of all love and light, then we wouldn't have been brought into this reality. We would have stayed there. We're
Right.
supposed to feel it all.
Right, right. You can't have the light without the darkness.
Right.
Yeah. I think for me, in my childhood, when I used to have really, negative emotions, I was always told, something's wrong with you. We're gonna have to send you away to
Oh,
like
wow.
somewhere, because I couldn't stop crying. I grew up in an abusive family, so they weren't as
Mm.
supportive, and so as I would be crying, I would be told that I would be sent away. Nobody wanted to deal with me. So I actually developed the idea that my emotions are too much,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody's going to abandon me if I have too much emotion.
Mm.
And same with you, having to really reconnect with my inner child, right? Because a lot of times I realize, not even that long ago, actually, very right, like not that long ago, when I realized I've been yelling at my inner child to get it together. We
Mm-hmm.
don't have time for this. We don't have time for this weak stuff right now.
Push through.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
Stop it. Let's go. You know what I mean? And she was not okay with that. And so finally same deal, sitting with her, right? Sitting with my inner child, doing some mirror work, going within and just being like, what do you need? What's
Mm-hmm.
wrong? Like, what can I do for you? How can I, and she just needed to cry and have me be there for her,
Yes.
and be there and let her cry and let her have her emotions, and not tell her that she was wrong for having them.
So
And
powerful.
yeah, yeah.
So powerful. When you listen, you always hear the message. It was probably 3, 4 years ago. I was in the shower. That's always where, all of the ideas come and all of that. I have all my conversations in there. And I remember I just broke down and I didn't understand why. And I just said, what do you need? And I heard my inner child said, I just needed a hug. And so then I heard, so give her a hug. And I literally did. And that is my practice every single day, twice a day, is that I literally wrap my arms around myself and I hug myself. And it has been the best gift that I have ever given myself. And I share it on stages, I share it with clients, like there's a way to hug yourself. And so I just share the hug. And it transformed me, because that is all I needed, was someone to sit there and hold me and say it was going to be okay, to not make me push through my feelings. To my dad, of course, because he was my father, he didn't know what to say at that time when that happened, so he said nothing. And in that nothingness, I heard he was ashamed of me. And my mom, she tried to teach me lessons. So you can't go off with strangers, you can't. And so what I heard was it was my fault. And so those were the messages that I heard. So while they were supportive, the silence and the lessons made me feel that I was making wrong choices, that I was unsafe, that there was something wrong with me. And that's where the perfectionist grew from. And that's where the overachiever grew from, and all of that, because I had to do everything right so I wouldn't feel unsafe or get hurt again.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy when we really think like our parents, they try their best, you know. It's not that it's not intentional, there's no manual to how to be a parent, and we just, you know, as children, we're not, you know, we're not fully developed, we're not really conscious, so we just pick up on these things and then they get embedded in us.
Yeah,
And then in our adult life, it is our responsibility to try and unravel that stuff, right? And that healing that takes place is, I mean, it's your own personal journey of, like you said, coming home to yourself and really being the parent that you needed for your inner child today and every day, really.
absolutely. It is up to us. And I remember the first time that I went to therapy, it's funny because I haven't done a lot of therapy. A lot of it was like my own self work and reading a lot and watching people and just learning. But I went to two therapists in my life. One, I was like, okay, I know more than this person. Like, like I've done more reading, more studying. Like,
Yeah.
and the other one, I remember she said to me, because I would talk about my parents, and then I would say, but they didn't know better, or they didn't know. And then she would say to me, but your inner child didn't know that. It's okay to still love your parents and still be angry, because as a child, as much as as an adult, I mean, I can see and understand. As a kid, we didn't have that rationale. We didn't understand that they didn't know better. We just needed someone to protect us and say the right things and hold us in this space. And we didn't get that. And that is our job as adults, to be able to, like you said, in a way, reparent ourselves, but
Mm.
to also give ourselves permission to be angry, to be hurt at them. It doesn't mean that they're bad people, but it just means that we're honoring our own feelings.
Yeah, yeah. That's a very good point. You know, I think sometimes we feel like there needs to be somebody to blame when there really isn't. Everyone is trying their best out here, and when we can really come from that awareness, we can have that acceptance, right? That healthy acceptance. The same way we want to accept our inner child and her
Mhm.
emotions, and accept ourselves when we're in our, you know, in our darkness, and
Yeah.
also how to accept our parents and where they're at, you know, and really understanding, you know, for me, my journey of healing was exactly for my future children. Like
Mm.
it was like my main driver. I was like, I will not give them the experience that I had. And so
Wow.
I don't have any children yet, but because
Yeah.
I'm still working on it, you know what I mean?
Well, all your clients and everybody are your children right now, because you're helping them all, with everything that you're learning
Yeah,
and
yeah.
have learned and healed.
What is something that, let's say somebody who's watching this right now, who is maybe finding themselves in a dark place right now, or maybe really struggling with some things that are going on, you know, whether it's externally, internally, I mean, it's all the same, right? What is something that you can provide some insight into that they can start doing and implementing today?
Self-compassion. I think that offering yourself understanding, the acceptance of what it is that you're feeling, the offering of love in that moment. I think when we can cultivate a safe and loving inner world, then we can navigate through anything. And for me and my clients that I work with, that I understand that as soon as we start to feel something and we feel the darkness, as we talked about earlier, we feel like we shouldn't be there, or there's something wrong with us. And we never really long enough to try to understand why we feel this way. Why are we having these emotions? And so for me, I always say, I understand. So when you sit with that and literally say the words, I put my hands on my heart and I go, I understand why you feel this way, Shari. I can understand why you're frustrated. I can understand why you're sad. I can understand why you don't trust that person or why you feel unsafe. Mm-hmm. Instead of being like, you should know better than that. What is wrong with you? There's, all of those ways that we are our inner bully. We have an inner bully in there. And so offering yourself self-compassion and kindness in that moment, I think, is step number one for anybody. Because once you feel that, your inner child feels safe enough to be able to come out. And that's what's been happening, I think, for all of us, that, again, that running from, it's because we don't feel safe within our own selves to be able to trust, to be able to open up, to be able to allow our emotions to come up. I mean, I think that's why we have anxiety, is because our emotions are trying to rise and we're just trying to push them back down. And it's like, I want to come out. It's like, no, you stay right there, And so giving ourselves and cultivating that space within, like a playground, like a safe space for kids, then we're able to meet ourselves where we're at.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's so funny when people are like, oh, I have anxiety, or I'm doing this. So, you know what I mean? And they're taking stuff for it. Like, right. You know what I mean? Like, they're taking stuff, like whether it's like medication, mm-hmm. or they're just trying to address the symptom without going underneath into the wound.
Yeah. I think it's because they don't feel safe with that. It's too scary to sit in that space for so many people, which I understand, because I used to not to want to either. That's why I turned towards food. That's why I partied in my 20s a lot with a bunch of alcohol. And I was like, my rationale is like, I'm in my 20s. This is what you do.
Right.
While I'm like, a bottle of vodka, like being like, woo, like, let's rage, and it was really because everything that I ever felt wanted to come up, and I just wasn't ready for it. And so we all find our ways of dealing with it, whether it's through medication or whether it's through eating or pills or overworking to not feel. But you're right. All we're doing is just treating the symptom.
Yeah.
And that will continue to follow us and chase us.
Yeah. I also want to mention people too, relationships, right? Like, I know certain people that would just be in back to back relationships. And, that always like gives me anxiety. I'm like, when do you ever get to be with yourself? And why are you trying to not be with yourself, right? And trying to find a person to then distract yourself and to be that Band-Aid or whatever it is. And, I kind of want your opinion on what you feel this time period in the world right now. Like, what from your perspective, what is it triggering, doing for us as like collective, as a human right now, like with everything that's going on with COVID and all the stuff?
I mean, immediately I knew. I was like, we're all being called to just slow down. The world has stopped, literally. Things are closed. All of our distractions, it's calling us to go inwards. That was it. That was like an immediate knowing. I'm like, oh, thank God. And I said, thank God, because I already, like, doing the work that we do, we already see that that's what most people are not doing. And that's what social media and like, and all the keeping ourselves distracted with the videos and the keeping up and all of this stuff, that we never slow down. We never have a chance to go inward. Mm-hmm. And I remember I live in Los Angeles, and we were the first state to have to go into lockdown. Yeah. And so it was like the second week or third week of lockdown. And the only thing I left my house for, and for whatever reason they called it an essential service, was for Starbucks, which I know sounds ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it was the only thing I gave myself, the only way that I left my house. So I remember I was coming back from Starbucks, and I was sitting in my car at a red light, and what came over me was, thank God for my trauma. And I was like, just went. And it was the first time, like, I understood everything intellectually, why everything happened to me, but it was in that moment that it embodied me, that made me realize that all of the work that I have done, all of the connection within, had made me feel okay with where we were at, because I had done all of this to understand that, this was all a calling to go inwards and that I was safe. And so all of that healing work, and that's where I feel like we're all being called right now, is to turn towards our shit, is
Yeah.
to sit with it, and to face it. And all of our shadows, everything is just rising to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why also there is so much conflict right now in the world, because people just want to run from it and they want to blame and they don't want to turn inward. So it's always everybody else. And people are losing their minds right now. And I don't say that, I'm saying with a smile because I always smile, but they really are losing their shit right now. And it's because I think all of our traumas, all of our collective trauma
Yeah.
has arisen.
Yeah, I know. I had that same moment with you, the one you had in the car,
Mm-hmm.
because, obviously doing this work, for not as long as you, but about 5, 6 years, healing from my own trauma.
Well, I'm much older than you, so.
Yeah. and and just like when everything happened, I was just, and I'm in San Diego, so
Oh,
same,
okay.
yeah, same state, same time zone, but
Yeah.
I was just kind of like, okay. Like I was like, oh, cool. Like I love being by
Yeah.
myself. Like I love sitting with myself. Like I love that I don't have to have all these distractions or go anywhere. Like I was like, everybody's like, are you crazy? Like I'm like, I'm enjoying quarantine. Like
Oh my
like
God. Yeah.
I get to meditate. I get to, just do the things that my inner child wants to do at my house. You know, and I think, for people that have experienced trauma and also healed from that trauma, like we know how to navigate these darker periods, knowing that we have to go below in order to rise, right? And that's kind
Yeah.
of how I'm seeing it too. Like even though, releasing the judgment of the expectation of what it should look like or where I should be or what I thought I had planned for this year, right? And releasing it and being like this and being present with what is,
Is.
knowing that we are going to get through this. We're going to come out on the other side of it and it's going to be better. I was saying on another interview yesterday, like people get scared about change because they think that on the other side, they're not going to like it and it's not
Right.
better, but it's always going to be better. And if it's not better yet, we're not on the other side yet.
Yes, yes, yes. And we're being called for that change because it will be better, because that's where we need to go next. That's where we're being called to. And we hold on for dear life because of this comfort that we think that we need, this safety, but not realizing that this is no longer for us. We hold on to things that are really uncomfortable, but just because we're used to them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I I love that moment that you had in the car, because I think, people, I've done like a 10-day silent meditation, and I remember when I was going in, like I had people who were like, oh my God, you sat with yourself in silence for 10 days to meditate. Like I would go crazy. And I was thinking, why would sitting with yourself make you go crazy? Like the fact that you can't, that's crazy.
Right.
And
Right.
it's, like you said, it's forcing everyone to go to look at their stuff, right? And that's why people are going crazy.
Yeah, because there's not as many distractions, and it's like people are like, oh, I'm so bored, and there's so much fear coming up because they have to sit in stillness.
Mm-hmm.
And in that stillness is where all the voices come in. In that stillness is where, all of the healing wants to come, but we just need to have our bars open and our restaurants open and the stores open and the gyms back open and everything so we can go and do.
Yeah.
And it's funny, when the lockdown started, I remember I actually exhaled, because listen, we're all human. No matter how much I teach people and how much I know, I'm a work in progress too. So, my nervous system still at times can be triggered and feel unsafe, even when I'm fine, and that's something that I've learned to acknowledge and see. And so I've learned to, achieve and go. And then when it's time to stop, when, some launch is finished, I'm like, okay, what's next? And I go, Shari, take your pause and take your rest. So when the lockdown came, it felt like for the first time that I didn't actually have to do anything, or we couldn't do anything. And that just like made me feel like that's when I recognized more, a little bit deeper, more healing I need to do. I was like, oh, you like feel calm right now. Like it makes you feel good that everybody else can't do anything either.
Yeah.
because there's that whole like, oh, they're doing it. I got to do something.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And now it's like, oh, nobody can do anything now. Like, oh, I'll just do a puzzle. I'm going to do
Yeah.
a piece puzzle and I'm going to be okay with just doing
Oh, I love puzzles.
that.
Gary, for those who are listening who want to get in contact with you, get familiar with your work, dive into your teachings or courses, whatever, what do you have going on right now? What can you offer us as service to the people that are needing this work?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, the best way to get in connection with me is through my website, sharyalyse.com. And then that has, links to all my social and everything. But I'm not a millennial. I'm older, so I'm on Facebook a lot. That's really where I do all of my videos. I've been doing daily videos before they were even called vlogs. They were actually just called video blogs. And so you can see me doing that and connect with me there. I am in the midst of creating another course right now, which will be out in January. But really, you could just keep up with me on socials. The best way to connect with me. I offer coaching, of course. I'm speaking right now virtually in different places. And then in December, I had a book tour scheduled this year in a lot of cities. That obviously is not happening. So I just created a virtual book tour in December where I'm combining a talk as well as a workshop. And I'll be coming into people's living rooms and hosting private workshop and book tour for each person. So a group up to 10 people, which will be really cool. So we're going to be doing some like rewriting of 2020 and then envisioning 2021. So that's really exciting as well.
I love it. I love it. Yes, I'm all about envisioning 2021. Even though 2020, like honestly, it hasn't really, like personally,
Right.
I hate to sound selfish, but it wasn't that bad of a year for me. But I think also that the trauma work, has allowed me to just be okay, with the change and the ever fluctuating reality that we don't have any control over. And thank God I worked on surrender a couple of years ago because
We would have been part of the people who are really struggling right now. And
right,
yeah, that's why I feel like at this point, and I've been talking to other people who have experienced trauma and healed from it, they have all been the best this year
right.
because again of the work that we've all been doing and almost like preparing for this in a way
Right.
of our lives.
I
But
know.
yes, definitely ready for New Year in whatever way that takes us, but still
Yeah.
finishing out 2020 strong though.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, whoever wants to get in touch with Shari and her amazing work, all of her corresponding links will be attached to the email that you receive this interview in, as well as on this site that this interview is hosted on. Shari, thank you so much for being here and sharing your heart, sharing your story, sharing your work. I feel so in alignment with you. I just, again, we're all just reflections of each other, right? So thank you for
Thank
being here.
you. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you guys for watching another episode of Transforming Trauma to Triumph. I'm your host, Diana Min, and we will catch you on the next episode. Bye.